tutorial is going to show you how to make a really simple robot arm that's going to do a simple task of picking up this ball and putting it in the basket. So it'll look something like this. So it's actually pretty straightforward. We're just going to be doing this simple task so that we can learn how to use what are called armatures. So they're what we kind of use to almost act like bones in whatever object we're creating, and then we can move things around a little bit easier. So I'm going to open up a new file, so Control N, General. I'm going to save this right away, so Control S, and I'm going to call this Robot Arm Tutorial and save my file. Okay, I'm going to delete the cube, X, delete, and I'm going to get into front view, so that's number pad 1. I'm just going to turn on my keys really quick. Now they're there. Okay, first thing we're going to add is kind of the base of the robot arm. So we're going to add it as a sphere. So you can go add or shift A for your shortcut. Mesh sphere. I'm going to move this over a little bit. So G, and then I'm going to move it along the X axis. I'll just put it over here. Now we want to stay in front view. You want to stay in orthographic view, but you can hold down shift and click your middle mouse button. Remember to drag it around. So I'm just going to do that right there. I'm also going to kind of make this a half sphere. So I'm going to go into edit mode, turn on X-ray, toggle on X-ray, and then I'm going to just select the bottom half of this, hit X, and delete the vertices. And there we have a nice little half circle for the base. I'm now going to add a cylinder that I'm going to kind of put right on top of this to act as kind of the stand going up. So I'm going to do Shift A or add, I'm going to get into object mode, Shift A. I'm going to add a mesh cylinder. I'm going to resize this how I want. So I'm just going to resize it down a bit. And then I'm going to make it taller. So I'm going to hit S and Z to just go up the, make it a little longer up the Z axis. That looks good. I hit G as my shortcut to grab and move, and I'm going to place it right kind of on the middle of the sphere there. Now, if I scroll around a bit, it should be, it looks pretty good. I'm going to go into top view 7. Look at that, looks nice. Go back to front view. I'm going to add another sphere up here to kind of be another joint. So I'm still in object mode. I hit Shift A, mesh, UV sphere. And then right away, I'm just going to size this down a bit. And then G, and I'll bring it up here, and it'll kind of, act like the joint there. Then I'm going to go and grab this cylinder, and I'm going to copy it, make a second copy of it. So Shift D is the shortcut, or you can right-click and duplicate. I'm going to bring it up here, but I'm going to rotate it around. So I'm going to hit R, spin it a bit to kind of be at an angle, and then I'll move it into there. So you can see it's kind of looking like a lamppost, but you can think of each of these circles as like a joint of your body, like your elbow or your wrist. So, and then these would be kind of like where the bones would be. So I'm gonna just duplicate this sphere actually. So Shift D, and I'm gonna move it up here to act as another one. I will duplicate this one more time, move it over, rotate it a bit. I'm going to size it a little bit as well down. There we go. Grab it, move it in position. Rotate a little more. Okay, looks good to me. And then I'm going to duplicate this one more time and make one more kind of part of this arm. So I'm going to duplicate this one as well. Something like that. And then duplicate this one more time. There we go. So we've got kind of a few different parts to this robot arm that we can eventually be able to move. I'm going to save it right now in case it crashes. And then now we're going to add the kind of the claw part onto this. So we're going to do that by adding a cube. So Shift A, mesh cube. And then I'm going to go into edit mode so I can turn this into kind of a triangle. So if I go to edit mode and I still have my X-ray selected, that way I can box select around these, and it'll select both of those vertices. I'm going back into front view. Now it's important that you stay in front view. You don't want to mess up the rotation of this. You can fix it, but it does make it tougher when you're trying to connect it to the armatures later. So if you keep everything in your orthographic views, it'll make your life a lot easier later on. So I'm just gonna hit G to grab those, and I'm gonna move them kind of into the shape of a claw. Bring this one down a little bit maybe. Kind of up to you how you want this to be shaped, but something like that. Okay, I'm gonna go back into object mode. I'm gonna grab this and move it up here. I'm just gonna rotate it a little bit this way, grab and move it. There we go. Then I'm gonna duplicate this one, and it's gonna be going up this way, but I need to rotate it around the Z-axis so that it's kind of facing the opposite direction. So if you put it kind of where you want it, you can hit R, Z, and then type in 180 and see how it rotates it around the Z-axis 180 degrees. Now I can kind of rotate it to the angle I want it to be and move it into place. There we go. So now that you have your robot arm made, you're going to join all the pieces together. I'm just going to do that by clicking and holding Shift and selecting each of these. You can box drag around some of them. So we've got them all selected. In object mode, the shortcut is Control J. I believe you can right click and join as well. But Control J and you see that it's all joined into one cube. I'm just going to rename this robot arm. Okay, I'm going to save it. Really quick, I'm going to make a cube for the table. So I'm going to go Shift A while I'm in object mode, mesh, cube. I'm going to move it down a little bit, G and C, and then I'm going to size it on the X-axis only. And then I'm also going to size it on the Y-axis. There's multiple ways you can do this. Something like that. Okay. Not going to worry about textures at all. Okay, back to front view. So now we're going to work on adding the, it's called armature, to the robot. So what we're going to do is we're going to start down here, and I'm going to add the armature. So Shift A, and you go to armature, click on it, and it'll add one over here. But I'm going to move this over and make sure it's kind of in the position there. Then we can size it. So I just hit S, dragging it up, S again. Okay, now that we've got the start of our armature, this is kind of the origin of the armature, or like the bone structure that we're going to have going through this. Now we can go into edit mode. So I'm going to hit tab in edit mode. And then with this part selected, if you hit E to extrude, it's just like anything else, you can add on another armature. So I'm going to add it kind of ending up into this sphere, which is acting like a joint. And then I'm going to extrude that again, bring it over, extrude again, over. And then I'm going to extrude 2 into the different arms, kind of getting down to the bottom there. Go back up to this one and extrude from this one again. So that one, kind of the end sphere here is going to have 2 armatures coming off of it, one for each of the claws. Okay, now we're going to go back into object mode. So I hit tab to go to object mode. I am going to, first of all, I'm going to make sure that my armature is positioned properly. So it looks good from this angle. When I go to the top angle, it also looks good. You might have yours kind of in front. So if your armature is somehow like over here, you just want to go and move it back into your position. So mine was, but there you go. Now you know how to fix it. Okay, next thing you're going to do is you're going to first of all select your cube, so your robot arm. So I've named it robot arm. And then you're going to select the armature while holding down Shift. You should be able to click on it. Oh, sorry, holding down Shift. I was holding the wrong button. Hold down Shift, click on your armature. There you go. Then you're going to right click, and if you go to Parent, there's an option up at the top Under armature deform, you're going to select the one that says with automatic weights. So if I select that, these are now what's called parented together. So what that means is when I move the armature, it's going to also move the corresponding parts of the robot arm. So let's play around with that. I'm going to save it. We're going to go into right up here where it says object mode. There's now a third option called pose mode. So if I click on pose mode, what I can then do is I can go to any of these bones of the armature and I can grab it. If I hit rotate or R, it's going to rotate the robot arm with it. I'm going to undo that. Let's try this one. Rotate. And just kind of test them all out and make sure they rotate the way they're supposed to based on where they are. Yeah, that one's good. Try this one. So far so good. Let's try this one. Yep, that claw works. And this one. And there we go. So just by being in pose mode, you can then go and rotate any of the bones and they'll move the arm along with. So we're ready to add our little ball that we're going to pick up and a little can to drop it in. So just I'm going to keep it really simple. I'm going to Shift A, add a mesh UV sphere, and then I'm going to make it smaller. Grab it. I'm going to put it on the table somewhere over here. And then I'm going to so Shift A, add a mesh cylinder. I'm going to change this, I think, add cylinder to nothing. If you change the fill type to nothing, and then so if you look, it's kind of empty, it doesn't have a top or bottom to it. But now if I go and, select that, ignore that, G and Z, I hit Z before I hit G. I just moved it over, and I'm going to keep it in line and move it right over here. Maybe size it down a little bit. Okay, something like that. So we've got our rough setup. You can add materials if you'd like to pause it and add materials. Like in the other video, I made my robot all kind of shiny gold and then change the color of the ball and the color of the trash can. But that's up to you. We're going to start by just animating just the robot arm using the armatures. So first of all, you're going to select the armature, and then you're going to change from object mode to pose mode. Then with everything selected, all the bones of the armature selected, you're going to set a keyframe at frame 1, so you can hit I, lock rod scale, just to lock everything in right at the start. Then we're going to go to frame 25, and we're going to start moving things. I'm going to kind of rotate each bone of rotate the bones that I need to of the claw and the rest of the robot arm, just so that he's kind of bending over to pick up this ball. So you might have to play around with it a little bit. There we go, something like that. Then to lock this in, or to set this keyframe, you're going to hit A to select all, I, and lock rod scale. So notice I selected all the bones and locked all of them in at this keyframe, or for this keyframe of 25 all together, just so that it makes it work a little bit smoother than if you did bone by bone. So I'm going to go to the next frame, frame 50, and at this one I'm going to have the bones of the claw moving in to select or to pick up the ball. And that's all I'm going to do for this one. I'm going to select all, again selecting all the bones, I, lock rod scale. Then at frame 75, I'm going to just basically move the robot back up and kind of get him ready to move over toward the trash can. So just rotate him up, and then I'm going to hit A, I, lock rod scale at frame 75, change to frame 100. And now is when I'm going to kind of stretch out the robot and get him over to the trash can, something like that. There we go. So I'm going to hit A, I, lock rod scale at frame 100. Then frame 125, I'm gonna release the ball. So I'm going to just basically open up the claws. Perfect. Select all, I, lock art scale. And at frame 150, I'm gonna have the robot just basically move back into place how he was before. So kind of bring this back up, these back down, and these back in. Select all, I, lock art scale. I'm gonna save and go back to the beginning and watch and see what my robot arm did. So bent over, moved to pick up the ball, went over to the trash can, released, and back up. So those are the basic movements you want your robot arm to do. Now notice I didn't do anything with the ball yet. That's what we're gonna do now. So I've got all my keyframes set up for the robot arm. Notice when I switch to object mode and then select the ball, those keyframes are all gone because I haven't set any yet for the ball. So I'm gonna start at frame 1 and I'm gonna set that at lock art scale there. And then I'm also gonna set it there at frame 50 because this is right before the ball gets picked up. So I don't want the ball to start moving until after frame 50. So I'm gonna lock it in or set the keyframe at this position again for frame 50. Then I'm gonna go up to frame 75, bring the ball up, set it right about there. I, lock art scale, frame 100, oops, same thing, just bring it back there, I, lock art scale, and then frame 125, it's going to be fallen into the bucket, I, lock art scale. Okay, I'm going to watch it, actually I'm going to save, and then I'm going to watch and see what it did. And it's probably a little bumpy. So see how it's kind of moving all over the place? So what you can do then if you want it to kind of be a little smoother. So because we set our positions every 25 frames or so, it doesn't necessarily look like it's moving exactly with the robot arm, but we can make that more precise by adding more keyframes. So like here at frame 60, I'm going to move the ball so it's a little bit more with the claw and lock that in. And then if I kind of go, okay, it's looking okay, to frame 75, and it looks okay the rest of the way. There we go. So if you go back to the beginning, and it plays up pretty nicely. So I'm going to save it. And then we're going to set up our camera and set it up for rendering. You don't have to add materials, but if you'd like to, you can. I set up some material, so go to material view up there. Now you can see it. So first thing I'm going to do is add some more lights, which I actually already did. So all I did was I took this light, I duplicated it, and then moved them around. So I've got 4 or 5 lights now. I'll move this one back here. And then if you were to go into render mode, you could see, yeah, it just looks like it's nicely lit. So you want to set up your lights. The next thing you want to do is set up your camera. So if you go into camera view, I hit 0 to go to camera view. The shortcut way to make it so you can easily move your camera, remember, is open up the toolbar on the side. So I hit N, or you can hit the little arrow here. And then if you go to the view tab, check off lock camera to view. Now when I scroll around, sorry, my mouse gets stuck. When I scroll around or zoom or drag, it gets moved with the camera, or the camera moves with the view, I should say. So you just want to make sure that your whole scene plays out within the camera view and that it looks good. So make sure you kind of get all of the robot arm in there, and mine looks good. Okay, so we set up the lights, we set up the camera. The third thing is to set up the output properties. So I've already done that, but over here, we're going to go to the little printer tab. It looks like a little printer, printed a picture. Output properties, and then you're going to go and change the file. So I clicked this file. I had already saved mine, but just make sure you're in your proper folder, and then give it a name. Like I named mine robot arm video. and then hit accept. And then the other thing you want to change is the end frame. So because ours went to frame 150, we can change it to 150 or like 155. But you don't want it set to the default of 250 because that would be too long. You just have a bunch of empty frames basically at the end, not doing anything. And then the third thing you want to change is this would have said, by default, it says file format PNG. But you need to change that to AVI JPEG. So I'm just changing mine back. So AVI JPEG for file format. So again, before you go to render, set up your lights, set up your camera, check your render view. So I'm in render view now so I can see what it's going to look like. Change your end frames, change your folder and name, and then change your file format to AVI JPEG. Save it and you're ready to render. But this time, instead of rendering an image, make sure you go to render and render animation. Once I click on that, it'll start. It's really slow, but you'll eventually have a video saved in that folder under that name that you gave it. If you're doing this from home, you can upload that to Google Classroom, and then I can mark it for you. Thanks.